first step is to understand there's a problem. Many companies and countries, many of them are still operating in the blind that climate change is a future problem. It's a 2050 problem or a 2060 problem, but that is not the case. Climate change is very much a now problem. It's not a grandkids problem. It's basically like a grandfather problem right now, right? As we say it. So first of all, first step is to understand how climate change will impact your supply chain, your assets, and your operations. And if you're a government, it's important to understand how climate change will impact food security or water security in the near term, as we have seen after the war. The second step is to figure out like what all, once you figure out the hotspots of those locations as well as assets or supply chains that are going to be impacted, then how do you adapt to it? And the way to adapt is threefold. One is, for example, we work a lot with the food companies, of the likes of Dole, Driscoll's, and how they're thinking about it is like climate change is changing the why, the how, and the where of the food crops. So number one step is areas which are under high risk of climate change, what all seed varieties or climate resilient seed varieties could help them adapt. Would farmers adapt to those impacts, but also build resilience of their supply chain for food companies. Right? It's a win-win situation for them. Second is, what are the new areas coming up for growing a particular crop? And as a company, you want to be there in those areas, building relationship with the farmers, setting up logistics, and so on and so forth. And the third step is that the risk that you cannot adapt to, how do you monitor these risks? Like for example, what is the risk of a heat wave or a drought or a hurricane in the next 3 to 6 months? And can you take decisions, reactive decisions, once you know these risks in advance? Number one, focus on the problem rather than the technology. Number two, I mean, nowadays there's a sudden rush of like being, especially for a tech founder, being too attached to the technology you are developing, versus in the first 2 years, we should be spending a lot of time understanding the problem. The second is low lights before highlights, right? As the founders, we have this thing of like, hey, we need to be out there selling. We need to be out there in the conferences. Versus, let me focus for the first 2 years, heads down, developing the product, building a great team. And which brings me to the third part is culture. Like, as we all know, like culture is strategy, right, for lunch. But I say like culture is strategy for lunch, breakfast, and dinner. So in the very beginning, you have to set up like what values and what culture you want your organization, whether it could be a 2-member organization, to run on. And because that will drive how successful of an organization you would be. After having participated in World Economic Forum Davos for the last 2 years, I've always felt that Davos doesn't have the participation from the global south as much. They're trying to bring issues which are of global nature. They're trying to build communities around these issues for the global south, but still the DNA is not there. I think this is where IGF has an opportunity to become the Davos of the global south, right? Bringing ideas which are relevant and issues which are relevant to countries in developing countries, like developing economies, and bringing a very like developing country lens to it.